All right, good morning, everyone. This video is for Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. Today's purpose is we're gonna walk through the final kind of things that I want you guys to know about the Catholic position on evolution. And I'm gonna offer you a few thoughts on spiritual sloth. You read letter 12 of the Screw Tape Letters for a homework assignment that was due yesterday. I'm gonna give you guys a couple thoughts on spiritual sluggishness and kind of how to combat that, especially during these times where we're kind of locked in our home. It's so easy to feel kind of weighed down or kind of spiritually wandering a little bit. So first, just kind of a housekeeping reminder. Each day you can see this is the teacher end of Blackbaud, but when you're in Blackbaud, you can hover over your classes and find my class. So let's just click 8th period here. So if you're 8th period senior, you should see, whatever that looks like for you. Each day, remember, I'm posting directions for what our class is going to look like. So it's really, really important that you check this announcement tab. So if you do have an assignment, you can see it in your assignment center. But the main thing is to go into your class and to view announcements. That's kind of where you see the directions. I'm also trying to post these on Classroom as well, just so we're all kind of on the same page as far as directions goes. Okay, but let's go over here. So we've already kind of talked a bit about these first 3 points, but the fourth one today is kind of looking at what the church teaches regarding evolution. Let's be very direct about this, that the church allows for belief in evolution in as much as it's true, which is it's important that we believe something that's true, and also that it's consistent with central church teachings, okay? So if we look at 1950, about 70 years ago, this was the first time that the church spoke formally about evolution. Why? Well, Darwin's theory of evolution had been around for about 100 years leading up to that. And there were a lot of theologians that were kind of talking about evolution. There was a lot of scientific discoveries being made. But it wasn't until 1950, about 100 years after Darwin's book on the origin of species, that Pope Pius XII kind of formally wrote about evolution for the first time. And why I think that is because, one, he wanted to be clear about what the church's stance is on it for the sake of people actually knowing it. And two, there was a lot of findings that were kind of making it more and more clear that evolution is probably true, at least on the genetic level. About 70 years ago, there were a lot of discoveries being made about modern genetic theory that, these mutations in DNA were causing creatures to slowly develop over time. And so there was a lot of promising discoveries about evolution being made around the 1950s. So he came out with this encyclical called Humani Generis, and this is kind of where we get kind of what we kind of hear about evolution from a church perspective. And the simple message is, he says, evolution of the body as such does not contradict Catholic doctrine. So let's break that down for just a moment. Evolution of the human body. So evolution, remember, is this, I think I have the definition up here somewhere. A change in inherent traits of organisms over time. So a change in inherent traits of organism over time. That idea and the truth of that idea is not in contradiction with Catholic doctrine, okay? So I put a little picture of, the classic picture of the chimpanzee or the ape slowly developing into a walking man, slowly developing into what looks like anatomically a man to an actual human being. Now, what we discover about evolution and what science has discovered as evolution, those discoveries are all about the human body, okay? So we human beings are body and soul. So the development of the human body, from a scientific perspective, great, doesn't contradict what the Catholic Church teaches, provided that we understand these kind of 3 caveats. A caveat is like certain things to kind of keep in mind. So we can believe in evolutionary theory. It's permissible, it's allowable, though Pope Pius XII also indicates in that document, though, it's not necessary to be a Catholic of good standing or a Christian of good standing to have to believe in evolution. So there's a lot of wiggle room You don't have to believe in it, but it is allowable, provided that first and foremost, you retain the belief that humanity originated from one set of parents. Okay, that's called monogenism. Monogenism is a fancy word basically saying that we all, Homo sapiens, human beings, came from one set of parents. And why that's important is because it goes back to Adam and Eve, the garden, and the doctrine of original sin. So if we were to believe that human beings came from multiple sets of parents, 75,000, 80,000 years ago, it'd be in conflict with original sin, because original sin, remember, it's that fallen state of human nature that we inherit by being human beings because of the sin of our first parents, Adam and Eve. It wouldn't be able to be propagated by them because original sin doesn't come from a single source. So it's important to believe in monogenism kind of as an important exception for belief in evolution. Okay, there's a really good podcast if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how that theory kind of fits into archaeology and anthropology and kind of the history behind the origins of Homo sapiens. If you wanted to reach out to me, I can get that to you. Second, the human soul is not a product of evolution. So our belief in evolutionary theory is permissible, provided that we understand that it pertains to the human body. Okay, so the human soul is part of what it means to be a human being, but did not come about as a product of the process of evolution. So the human body was developing, coming about, slowly developing over time, coming from this all the way to this. That's the development of the human body, but it does not apply to the human soul. So the human soul, I believe as Catholics, is unique and created immediately and directed by God. And this goes back again to Genesis. Let us make man in our own image and after our likeness. Okay, so the human soul is different from the animal soul. It's similar, but it also has certain faculties and powers that make us different than all the other animals in the world. We can think, we can make decisions, we have reason, and we can conceptualize things. We have self-consciousness. It's important to keep in mind that the church instructs us we should not believe that the human soul is this product of evolution. And then last, it's important to keep in mind, our belief in evolutionary theory, while it is permissible, we should keep in mind that God is the first cause of all creation and governs its development. Why this is important that the church instructs us is that, even though, as I mentioned yesterday, God is not in competition with creation and works alongside of it and is developing it, he is originally the first cause of creation, okay? So something can't come to be from nothing. God is the cause of all things. God holds everything in existence. And God is the one who's governing the creatures, the development of creatures. There's intelligence and harmony behind everything that happens in the universe. And it'd be an error to say that everything came to be solely from evolution. Okay. Final thoughts on this question. I think we as Christians and as Catholics should be excited about the discoveries of science, because I think it's so cool, the fact that science is finding out more and more the facts behind how we came to be. All these fantastic things they're discovering in Africa about the origins of man. I think that's just amazing, because it really reveals the wonder and kind of unlocks the mystery behind how we came to be. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind that evolutionary theory can't answer all questions. And why I think that's important is, in the words of Pope Benedict, and this is from the article, he said, the doctrine of evolution doesn't answer everything. It doesn't answer the great philosophical question: where does everything come from? And does everything take a path that ultimately leads to the person? It seems to me that it is very important that reason opens up even more, that it sees this information, but that it also sees that this information is not enough to explain all of reality. So evolution has a lot of value in explaining how God works with kind of these secondary causes, what happens within creation to bring about a certain outcome. It's really fantastic to discover those things, but it can't ultimately answer all of the questions of life, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Okay, now last thing. So part of the homework was you guys learned a little bit about spiritual sloth. So again, it's not that cute, fuzzy little animal on the right side there. Spiritual sloth is kind of an interesting thing to think about. People have defined it as a sluggishness of soul. Okay, it's kind of this this slowness of heart. It's not necessarily laziness, though I think laziness is definitely a part of it. Where you just kind of feel like you just can't get going. Okay, there's things I can do that are valuable with my day or with my life. There's things that I ought to be doing with my life, but I just can't seem to kind of move myself to do it. Okay, it's this kind of struggle to follow through with your basic duties, whether that's around the house, in your life, just that checklist, that to-do list that appears in your head. At the start of your day or towards the end of the day, you just can't seem to get around to doing it. And in the Screwtape letter that we read, it described it as this vague, uneasy feeling. It's this kind of like I just kind of don't feel right, that I just haven't been doing all that well lately. I just kind of feel off. That's a little bit about sloth. Now, sloth is kind of this. It's definitely it's definitely sinful when we let that continue to, when we're aware of it, we continue to let it, kind of govern our thinking and our decision making. This kind of laziness, this kind of slowness to do anything worthwhile. How Screwtape wants to take advantage of sloth is to continue this sort of feeling that I'm just not at rest, even though I don't have that much to do. I haven't really been doing what I've been supposed to be doing lately, whatever that looks like, and turn that into allowing him to become resistant to anything good, anything godly, anything, even anything that's leisure, taking a walk, exercising, reading a good book, doing something that you like to do. Allow this this sort of sluggishness to make you just feel like not doing anything at all. And why that's kind of a valuable strategy for Screwtape is because it doesn't really give us a whole lot of awareness that we're doing really anything wrong, or that we're really doing anything like really, really, really bad. It's not a huge, grand, extreme sin. It's rather this slow drifting away from good or godly things. And last, I think it's kind of the overall takeaway I like from this letter is it seems like Screwtape's trying to create a frog in the pot situation. So you probably heard of this analogy before, but how do you kill a frog? Well, you don't toss him into a pot of boiling water that's already scalding hot. He's just going to hop right out. But if you put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water and slowly turn the heat up to slowly, gradually boil it, that's how you kill a frog. So these small, gradual sins kind of creating this spiritual drift, this laziness, this do-nothingness leads you further and further away from God. And one last quote. I think this is really a common struggle in American society today, not to mention the fact that we're all kind of on, this social distancing, quarantine, lockdown. We don't really have that much to do. And so what we do with that time is super important. And this author, Solzhenitsyn, kind of described it well. He said that American struggles are cupidity, boredom, sloppiness, and indifference. It's not the acts of a mighty, all-pervading, repressive government, but our failure in America is being listless. We don't really make use of our freedom all that well. So my challenge for you guys maybe this weekend is, how can you kind of break out of the ordinary and do something that gives you life, that makes you experience God in a different way? It kind of breaks you out of maybe a cycle of boredom or kind of just spiritual struggle. That's all I have. Again, over in Google Classroom, you're going to see your assignment where you can post your notes from the last 2 weeks. I'll be grading those over the weekend. No homework for Monday other than turning in those notes by tomorrow at 4 p.m. Hope you guys are well. You're in my prayers, and have a really wonderful weekend. Don't be afraid to shoot me a message if you have any questions. And for those of you that have, I'm working on responding to you this afternoon. Thanks, guys.